Stinging nettle hurts. You have to remember that. Good morning and welcome to Willow's Green Permaculture. Today I'm going to show you how to use jewelweed if you think you've come into contact with poison ivy and you're far from home, far from any kind of soap, but you still have access perhaps to water and to jewelweed. And I'm also going to show you what you can do if you've got a poison ivy rash that has already begun, using stinging nettle to treat it. So if this is something you're interested in, then let's get started. Now I'm pretty sure I've come into contact with some poison ivy right here while weeding. Sometimes the weeds are so thick I don't notice it, although usually I'm pretty good. But sometimes if I'm real excited, well, and I don't generally use gloves. I'm not gonna wait until later today or tonight or tomorrow morning to find out if I have. I'm gonna do something about it right away, just in case it was poison ivy. And if it wasn't, well then, it's just a little bit of time. So, if you've got access to water, here I've got a bucket of water because I'm at home. I could just go inside and take some really good soap and wash it off. Get my arm really wet, get the soap all lathered up. When it's all lathered up, I start washing it as if I'm washing off motor oil that I got all stuck to my arm, because that's what causes the rash. It's the oil of the poison ivy, and it's really sticky like motor oil, and so you have to really wash it off well, like you're washing off motor oil, so that it's completely off, completely clean before you start itching it. Because when you start itching it, that's when you're going to get it into your blood, and that's when it's just too late. Now, the act of weeding and so on, maybe I came into contact with some poison ivy, maybe I broke the plant, got the juice out, and because I was weeding, I was scratching my arms with the weeds by accident, and maybe it's already gotten into my blood. I don't know. We'll find out. But the thing is, you know, some people are afraid of poison ivy. They think they're going to get they're going to get a reaction just by looking at it. You can actually even touch poison ivy, so long as it's not broken. Because in order to get a poison ivy rash, you have to come into contact with the plant's juices, which means you have to break the stem or break the leaves. Now, this isn't poison ivy, this is grass, but you get the idea. And in order to deal with it, a natural way, if you're not at home and you don't have any soap, is by using jewelweed, which I've picked up here. This is jewelweed, also known as touch-me-not, and its scientific name, I believe, is Impatiens capensis, something like that. Impatiens capensis. I just picked this from right beside my compost bin, and I want to start using it before it gets all dried up and stuff. But as you can see, it's full of juice. In order for the jewelweed to work, well, you're going to break it exactly like you did by accident with the poison ivy, and you got the poison ivy juice on you. Well, you're going to use the jewelweed juice to help clean off the poison ivy. Apparently there are other ways of using jewelweed, like making something out of the flowers and so on, but this is one way. You make jewelweed into soap. Now all I'm going to do, first I'm going to get my arm all wet, get the section that got the poison ivy on it really wet, and I'm going to do the other arm too. And now I'm just going to break this in half and get it all wet too, because getting it wet will just make the process a lot faster. And now what I'm going to do is just break it up to smaller pieces. If I've got too much to work with, then I'll just put the rest in the water. Now let's get closer. Got it all wet and all broken. And now what I'm going to do is crush it and get all those juices out. And basically lather it up. It's going to turn into soap. Some of it's going to drop back into the water, which is fine. I'm not going to lose any of that juice because it's just going to drop into the water. And I'm going to just squeeze, lather it all up. You see that? You see that lather? And then I'm going to take that lather and I'm going to lather it on to where I got the poison ivy. And I'm going to get some more. Another piece here, lying here. I'm going to crush that because I want more lather than that. Get all these pieces going here. The bottom pieces have a lot of juice in them. It's that jewelweed juice you want to use. Because what jewelweed has is saponins, which is one of the main ingredients in soap. I believe that's why you can't eat jewelweed. Just like you don't want to eat soap. No, I don't have to clean my other arm, it's just this one. All right. Now, here we go. Just rub, you see that? And just use it like a bar of soap. I'm actually gonna go get some more. So I went and got some more because I want to make sure I do a good job, and I'm gonna test it by not going inside. I'm not gonna go inside. I'm not gonna wash it with soap because this should do it. And if I end up getting a rash, well, I've had poison ivy before. I'll live with it for a few days. Hot water helps. Okay. So, let's continue. Break this up. Keep the juiciest part, the rest is just in the water in case I need it after. Dip this in. And I'm gonna take all the water as well. I'll show you the water in a minute. But it's completely changed color. Let's hope this worked. Basically, I was imagining I had motor oil on my arm and what I needed to do. Now the thing is, you don't want it to be dry when you're rubbing it because you don't want it to be like you're scratching the poison ivy. That's why water helps. That's why if you're not home and you don't have soap, but you have jewelweed and water, then that's what's going to help. Because you don't want to create friction. You don't want to imitate the scratching. And so you really want it to be like using soap. So you want it slippery and so on. Now I'm going to tell you a few words about poison ivy. But before I show you some poison ivy and how to identify it, I'd like to give you the growing conditions of jewelweed, and later I'll be getting to the stinging nettle and how you treat poison ivy with it. This is some young stuff that I haven't touched yet, so it's strong. I've got a whole bunch of jewelweed here growing beside my compost bin. Now, jewelweed is a plant that tolerates very well the shade. Here it gets shade for probably half the day. Here's some more. It also can grow in full sun, and it loves conditions that are very, very wet. and you will also find it very often close to poison ivy. Now, if you want to have lots of jewelweed where you live, all you need is to make sure you grow 1 or 2 plants and let them flower and go to seed. Once they've gone to seed once, because they get many flowers, and they throw their seeds everywhere, and then you can eventually have it everywhere. In woodland areas, jewelweed can form a carpet, which is very beautiful. But when it's under these conditions, with so much shade, often it won't be able to flower, so it won't give you seeds. But if it's in these conditions, it's because somewhere close by it does have the right conditions. For instance, at the other side of that fence, where it can flower and throw the seeds this far away. 3-4 meters away it can throw them. That's why it's also called touch me not. Because if you touch the flowers when the seeds are ripe, the ripened seed pod explodes and throws them in every direction. As if to say, don't touch me. It's very easy to pull. Taking several stems just to make the process easier. As you can see, it doesn't have much of a root ball at all. Here's one example of poison ivy. Now you might be wondering why it's growing right beside this lettuce. Well, it's because I haven't had the chance to carefully remove it. It's going to have to wait until for maybe another week or two, because I'm just too busy this time of spring. And the reason why there's poison ivy here is because a couple weeks ago I put in this hazelnut tree. It was a bare root, and because the soil here is really wet, I wanted to raise it up. So I cut up some logs and created some from dead trees that we have in the forest, and created this little raised bed, filled it with compost. And because the compost was so fresh, and because I wanted to give this hazelnut some friends, some companions, I planted some lettuce around it and some onions. And the onions especially are going to help the hazelnut with its own health. It's going to help it with its immune response and its defenses against pests and insects and so on, and fungus and disease. And because this is a wild area, there was likely poison ivy growing around here somewhere in the grass. And here it jumped into the bin. And we don't try and eradicate poison ivy. It would be next to impossible on our property, because we have deer that come through here all the time, and poison ivy is food for the deer, especially in the wintertime. I don't know if they actually eat the leaves, but in the wintertime they eat the fruit and then drop the seed. Here's the mulberry I was showing you when I was doing the yarrow video, and right behind it some very healthy poison ivy, a whole bunch of it surrounding this trunk. This is an actual trunk attached to the ground that I basically incorporated into this raised bed that I made for the mulberry. You see, you can touch poison ivy and not get the rash, so long as the leaves aren't broken and the juice isn't coming out. Of course, if the way you touch it, you crush it, then, well, you'll end up with poison ivy rash. And then there are many plants that look like poison ivy, like this one. This is a native wild type of groundnut, or type of potato, and its leaves look a little bit like poison ivy. Some people might even confuse strawberries with poison ivy, or raspberries. These are strawberries. Virgin's bower might also be confused with poison ivy. Here's some poison ivy growing in some drier conditions. The leaves are a lot thinner. Here's a thicket of poison ivy. You wouldn't want to fall into that. And then we have got poison oak, which is a cousin to poison ivy, and it gives you the same reaction. Now here's a plant you shouldn't confuse with poison ivy, even though it has 3 leaves, because if you look, all 3 leaves are stuck together. You don't have the middle leaf that comes up. Like for example, here's some of that virgin's bower, and you see how the leaves, the middle stem comes up like this. We'll have a look at poison ivy again in a moment to give you a comparison. This is Jack in the Pulpit. And here is the confirmation that it's Jack in the Pulpit. Right here. We've got this little flower starting to grow here, which is quite beautiful. Jack in the Pulpit. Here's some more of that poison oak. And as you can see, the 2 base leaves are basically attached together, whereas the third one has a stem coming up. That's how you can tell it's poison ivy or poison oak. However, there are other plants that do the same thing. While I was filming the poison ivy, my sleeves were all still rolled up, and I got a whole bunch of mosquito bites because I was in the woods. So I'm going to use this same jewelweed water to wash off my arms in order not to get irritated by the mosquito bites. The jewelweed wash is also good against mosquito bites. Funny thing is, the mosquitoes bit me on the same arm as I had the poison ivy. So. And now I got some good compost tea to give to some plants. Now the important thing is not to scratch. And the way you don't scratch anything, whether it's a mosquito bite or it's poison ivy or any other type of irritation like that, is you can use hot water. You run your tap until the water is hot to a point that you can just tolerate it. Obviously you don't want to burn yourself, but you can just tolerate it. And at that point, that's when you run it over your skin where you've got the irritation, and it calms the irritation for several hours. You can ask your doctor about it. They'll let you know. It's a form of hydrotherapy. Now let's get to how I used stinging nettle to treat and cure my poison ivy. So it's the next day, and yesterday I realized as the day went on that the poison ivy I've got here, I didn't get it yesterday. I realized that 2 days ago, two nights ago, I had noticed that it was itchy, and I had noticed there was a little tiny bit of redness, but I refused to scratch it because in the past I'd had poison ivy there. And so I thought that might be poison ivy. And so I didn't touch it, I didn't scratch it, and I put hot water on it from the tap, and that calmed it down. And so I didn't scratch it, and so I didn't get, let's say, an explosion of irritation, which happens when you get poison ivy. But the thing is, yesterday when I started the video with the Jewelweed, I had just been weeding without gloves, and the act of weeding and pulling all sorts of really thick weeds, mostly grass actually, because grass is really hard to pull. Well, the bits of grass shards were scratching at my wrist, I guess. And that's what irritated it. And that's what made me think, oh, I've got poison ivy. And that's what gave me the idea to use the Jewelweed. But the thing is, because I didn't get it yesterday, the Jewelweed, it's too late. Jewelweed, you have to use it right away when you think that you've had exposure to poison ivy. Once the poison ivy's gotten into your system, the Jewelweed can't wash it out. But it can wash it off when you've just had exposure to it. However, when I realized that yesterday, that's when I went and used some stinging nettle. And it really helped me last night because my poison ivy was not itchy during the night. All I had was that tingling feeling. So I'm going to use it again today, and ouch, to help me cope with the poison ivy. This is a really healthy stand of stinging nettle. So I'm just rubbing my arm where I've got the poison ivy on the stinging nettle. It's amazing once you've gotten used to stinging nettle how it really, really doesn't hurt. The first times it hurts. But when you're not expecting it, it hurts. I gotta do this quickly because there are a lot of mosquitoes out here this morning. So the thing is, what the stinging nettle does is it gives you this pins and needles feeling. It's almost like it's electric. And so it replaces the itchiness with this pins and needles feeling. And what I can tell you is, if it's nighttime and I'm trying to sleep, well, I'd much rather have this feeling than itchiness. Itchiness won't let me sleep. This, it sort of becomes numb after a certain while. And it's hard to explain. You still kind of feel that those pins and needles, but they're I don't know. It's like the feeling is less strong. I don't know. It's like, almost like it's a form of acupuncture. I don't know. That's what Maggie said yesterday. Anyway, now I feel it all over this part of my arm, and it's really helping. However, I'm getting mosquitoes, so let's see how long this stinging nettle lasts. Oh, and the other thing I did last night is, well, it was yesterday during the day that I used the stinging nettle, and only once it was enough, and it lasted me right up until this morning. Then this morning I could barely feel the stinging nettle, so I came out to get some more. But another thing I did last night before going to bed, after having had a shower, was, and by the way, during my shower, I put hot water over it, and that really helps too. Now, but another thing I did before going to bed to help this heal more quickly was I took a nice piece of fresh aloe and I rubbed it onto my skin there, gently. But I mean, aloe is very gentle, the juicy cream inside. And I rubbed to cover the whole area, because what aloe does is it basically, it forms a barrier, and then it dries, and it's almost like a second skin. And it only takes about 10 minutes to dry, but you really have to have patience and wait for it to dry, so that because you don't want to wash it off or something like that. You really want to leave it on and let it dry. And I generally don't wash my hands. I mean, because I was putting it there, I didn't want to wash my hands after using the aloe. And so if I went to eat something with my hands, like an apple or something, well, I'd have to anticipate that bitter taste of aloe on my fingers. But anyway, that also really, really helped. Ouch, it hurts. It hurts. Now that's the thing. Stinging nettle hurts. It's not an insupportable pain. No, there's another word for that. It's a pain you can handle. And believe me, it's much better than having a poison ivy itch. And so the other stuff I was using, I think it was starting to wear out because I touched it a bit too much. So I guess I was crushing all the little pins and needles. And so I found this stuff that I propagated, because in my stinging nettle video I told you about just taking little pieces of root or little bases of stems, or even stems and putting the leaf node in the earth. Well, that's what I did here, and look at how healthy these are. I did this probably around the time of making that video, and look at these things. They're really, really healthy. They're food, they're medicine, they're good for doing a green mulch. They feed your plants, you mulch with them. They are good for retaining the soil because the roots are crazy. Be very careful where you plant stinging nettle. The roots are just absolutely crazy. So if you got a spot where you're worried about erosion, plant some stinging nettle. and the roots will create a net that will hold all your soil together. Okay, mosquitoes are starting to eat me now. I don't want to itch for mosquitoes after I'm taking care of a poison ivy itch. Just let this start tingling. Yeah, there we go, all done. And here I am giving myself another treatment. It took 3 days, about 4, maybe 5 treatments of stinging nettle. And what's great is no itchy irritation, and the poison ivy cleared up. These stinging nettles are in the shade. I wonder, okay, okay. Oh, I think I found the sweet spot. The sweet spot on the leaves are like at the base of the leaves. Yep. 15 minutes later, the itch is gone. All I feel is the tingling of the stinging nettle. So it's evening, and I've just come in from a long early June work day. It's June 7th. It's the busiest week of the year. So many of the heat-loving vegetables, we have to get them into the garden. So it's a long day's work, and I have to say that I am very grateful to have learned about the healing powers of stinging nettle. It first caught my attention when I learned that it helps arthritis. So when I got the poison ivy, I thought, maybe it'll help that too. But what I can say is this. Right now, on my right wrist, what I'm feeling is those pins and needles of the stinging nettle. What it feels like, it's hard to describe. It feels like I've got this sort of, those old wristbands from the 70s and 80s, sort of like made of material. But it made it as if it was a heating blanket. That's what it kind of feels like. And it also kind of feels like someone is holding my wrist. Anyway, there is that sort of this numb pain, if I can describe it that way. And believe me when I tell you, I'd rather feel that than the desire to itch. Because I've had poison ivy about 3 times, I think, in the last 5.5 years. Man, it can keep me awake at night. What I've done in the past is put hot water on it. Sometimes it would wear out during the night, and I'd have to get up in the middle of the night and run the water until it's hot. This is much better because it lasts all night. The relief from the stinging nettle lasts about 12 hours because I put it on late afternoon yesterday, if I recall, or early afternoon, and I was good until this morning. This morning I went straight out, got some stinging nettle, and did it. And then because I was working a lot today and sweat a lot and all the rest of it, I thought this afternoon, because it was early morning, I thought, well, by the time I go to bed, it will have worn off. And sure enough, it had worn off by about mid-afternoon, and I wanted to scratch. And so late afternoon, I went and used it. And the funny thing is I showed you when I was doing it, and I felt like the stinging nettle wasn't stinging me. Maybe I'm getting used to it. And so I rubbed a lot of the stinging nettle on my wrist. But now I can feel it that I had rubbed a lot of stinging nettle on my wrist, because it's really intense. But believe me when I say that it feels good. It feels so much better than it would if I wanted to scratch because of the poison ivy. Because when you scratch poison ivy, you just make it worse, and it just becomes indescribably bad. I don't even want to describe what it can look like if you scratch it. It's just not good. There you go. This video was supposed to be about using jewelweed to prevent a poison ivy rash, but I got the rash. So it's more about nettles and poison ivy. But you got both. Thanks for watching. I hope you liked the video. Hope you found it useful and you learned something from it. If you enjoyed it, then please give it the thumbs up and share it with your friends. Don't forget to leave a comment below or ask a question. I love to answer your questions or respond to your comments. And if you haven't done so yet, then subscribe. Support what we do here just by subscribing. Thank you very much for watching. Have a wonderful week, and we will see you next time. Here's a solitary bee, a wonderful native pollinator, drilling her nest into a garden stake. This is one of the reasons why it's great to use old logs and big thick sticks and branches, because they'll use those as well. Stay tuned after about 30 seconds for more images of beautiful jewelweed in different parts and different environments.